right. Good morning. My name is Hannah Vincent. I am a training specialist here at Ryman Hospitality Properties, and I have JP Tinnell here with me today from WSM. And we're going to talk to JP about what he does in the radio industry and kind of how anybody interested in that industry can get a start. So JP, you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, as Hannah said, I'm JP. I am the Director of Content and Programming for WSM Radio, which is the radio station that Ryman Hospitality Properties owns. Our studio is pretty cool. Our studio is actually in the Gaylord Opryland Hotel. So if you ever visit the Opryland Hotel, you can swing by and actually see our personalities on the air, especially in the morning show. You can always see artists coming in and out. So we do a lot finally for the last year or so. We haven't been, we did all our interviews remotely, but we're finally this morning, as a matter of fact, had our first guest back in the studio. So we're really excited about that. So basically, my job is the job of the program director, which is probably a term you've heard in radio before, but I also take on a lot of duties of the general manager as well of a radio station. We kind of, here at RHP, we kind of took the two jobs and made a hybrid. So I very much oversee the day-to-day business of the running of the radio station, but my heart is in content creating. I'm a creative. I really enjoy, coming up with ideas for shows that we do, especially artist-driven shows. A good example of that is a show that we launched just at the beginning of this year, which is called WSM Playlist. And we actually turn the radio station over to artists for an hour, and they create the playlist that we feature that hour. They talk about the songs, why the songs were important to them. It could be meaningful to their career. Could be songs that they remember performing early in their career as covers of other artists. So it's a really interesting show that we launched this year. So yeah, my heart is really in that aspect of it, is in the creative part of WSM. But I oversee all of the daily programming. So, we have the radio station, like the old fashioned radio station, which is WSM AM. We are 24/7 music, and we are the radio home of the Grand Ole Opry. So we carry all the Opry shows. Now we have Tuesday shows, Friday shows, and of course the Saturday night Grand Ole Opry that we have carried for 95 years. And later this year, we'll be coming up on our 5,000th broadcast of the Grand Ole Opry on WSM. So it's really exciting to be here at this time. And like I said, shows I help create. I work with the morning show, help them come up with ideas for the morning show. And I work with our music director, who actually creates what's called our music logs. So think about like playlists that you create on Spotify or Pandora or Apple. And that's kind of what we do. We just get to broadcast it out onto the radio. So we create those playlists, and a lot of thought goes into that. What artists we play, what songs we play, what songs follow other songs. So for instance, you wouldn't want a bunch of 1980 songs to play back to back to back. So we have a music scheduling program that we actually use. That helps us kind of schedule by artist, we do a lot of decade scheduling. So, and then also new music. We play new music on WSM. And then we also have our streaming stations, which are Route 650, which is Americana, roots, bluegrass music. And then we also have Opry Nashville, which is a streaming station that is more of, 24/7, a lot of today's country, a lot of today's artists, the younger artists that you would see play at the Opry. As a matter of fact, if you ever visit the Grand Ole Opry and you're out on the Opry Plaza, the music that you hear is Opry Nashville. So they're actually streaming one of our stations. And of course, WSM, we stream. We have an app, so you can download the app and stream WSM through the app and hear it in digital clarity without listening to AM radio, which as the years go on becomes, less and less, and really our digital product is becoming more and more important to us.
That's awesome. I did not know that was what streamed on the Opry Plaza. So that's really cool.
Yes.
To learn that. So always good music out there. So good job. So how did you get into this business? Kind of where'd you get your start?
I was going to school at MTSU, and I was actually working at the two school-run stations, which WMOT at the time was an NPR station, a National Public Radio station. So we carried a lot of national content that was produced by NPR. And then at the time, it was jazz, usually at night. So we do a lot of like NPR programming during the day and then play jazz at night. And then there was WMTS, which both of these stations are still at MTSU. WMTS was the student-run station. So that's where you can go on and actually have your own show, and it's all student-run. The program director was a student, music director was a student. It was strictly student-run. And so I was doing work at both of those stations while I was going to school at MTSU for communications and broadcasting. And I was just on the way home to my parents' house one afternoon, early or late spring, early summer, like school was about to, we were about to go on summer break. And I was on the way to my parents' house, and I drove by this radio station in Dixon, Tennessee, and I saw somebody in there, and I just kind of pulled in, and I went in and talked to the office person and said, "Hey, I'm going to school at MTSU. I really want to be in radio. Is it cool if I just come and hang out? Like, I'm not asking for a job. I just like want to come and hang out." And they were like, "Well, the program director has to okay it." And he did. And so a couple of mornings later, I'm just hanging out with the program director while he does the morning show at this little local radio station in Dixon, and just started hanging out there through the summer. And by the end of the summer, I had a part-time job running the high school football games on Friday nights, and then doing, running a lot of their weekend programming. And so it just kind of evolved from there. And then from there, I went to Clarksville, and I've been to Jackson, and I've been to Cookeville, and I've just kind of been all around the mid-state. And now I'm here at WSM in Nashville.
That's fantastic. So what did you go to school for exactly to study for radio?
Well, broadcasting and communications.
Okay.
Communications is the biggie. Now, you can kind of get into radio through other, other things that you can study in school, like PR, marketing. They all kind of have inroads into radio these days. But when I went, it was communications and broadcasting. And, I'm from Waverly, Tennessee originally, which means I sounded like I was from Waverly, Tennessee, when I started school. And so I got to be honest with you, one of the best classes that I took was diction classes in school, to really teach you how to enunciate properly and how to kind of, here in the South, we like to extend our eyes. So we have long eyes, like wine and, and dine. And so learning how to bring that down. And even things like, I remember like when I first started college, you would see a truck, that spins the thing and has the concrete in the back. And I would call that a cement truck, like cement. And it's, you learn it's actually cement. And so things like that. I would pronounce O-N and O-W-N the same way, like on and own, but it was all own, like turn on the light. I own this computer. So I've got to say, like, probably the most helpful classes that I took in college were diction classes, and teach you how to enunciate properly. So
that's super interesting. Definitely something that I've learned over the years too, because my family's from Kentucky, and so definitely a different kind of dialect there. So it's interesting that that's something that's important to your industry.
Yeah, and you don't want to abandon your roots, and you don't want to completely get rid of what you should sound like from where you're from. But at the same time, you know this, Hannah, you get into business settings, and there's a certain expectation as to how you speak. Yeah. And so I found that very helpful, especially at MTSU.
That's awesome. So what kind of career paths are there kind of within your industry? You're more you said on the programming side, but you also do some kind of managing. What other kind of positions are there within WSM that people interested in the industry could kind of pursue?
The two biggest, kind of buckets in radio is programming and sales. Programming is, like a program director, music director. We have an assistant program director here. The on-air staff, they're all part of the programming team. Producers, editors are all part of the programming team. And this is not, and it's really interesting that we're having this conversation in 2021 because the radio industry is expanding. I mean, it's all part of the radio industry, but all of these jobs now exist, or most of these jobs exist with Spotify and Apple and podcast production companies. They all have writers and producers and editors. And there's someone, like in my position, there's a director, of the content that's kind of overseeing all of that. So it's not exclusive to how you might think like old school radio, like a radio station, but all of these digital companies are following this kind of same path. And then the other big bucket is sales. And that's, you create all this great content, but we're a for-profit company, so we have to go out and sell it. And so we have a sales team, we have a sales manager. A lot of stations will have general sales managers, and just in sales alone, there's plenty of avenues to start going down. And then there's also marketing, and that's really increased. That presence has really increased with stations in the last 10 years or so, because your head of marketing is going to be the person that oversees your social media. From everything from overseeing your social media down to if you're going to go out and do a live broadcast, they would organize that and kind of schedule that. So marketing has really increased its footprint in the radio industry, I would say in the last decade or so. And then that's also promotions, so kind of marketing and promotions. So those are the three main players at a station like WSM.
Awesome. So what would you say is kind of the part of your job that excites you the most, or do you have any fun stories to share from your time with WSM?
Plenty of fun stories with WSM. This is a very fun job. Let's see. I guess, and you're going to find, Hannah, you're going to find this the most interesting. The first Opry show I ever attended was here. Like, I grew up here. Like I said, I grew up about an hour from Nashville, never attended a Grand Ole Opry show until I, started at WSM and was actually able to go and watch a show live. If you're familiar with the Grand Ole Opry, it's made up of what's called Opry members, and it's really special in an artist's life to become a member of the Grand Ole Opry. And I was able to be there the night that Luke Combs was invited to join the Grand Ole Opry. And I was also there the night that Kelsey Ballerini was invited to join the Grand Ole Opry. And then in turn got to be there the night they were both inducted into the Opry. So those are really fun, special moments. I mean, it's like a little party backstage, and in other parts of the Opry House. I mean, it's a big deal when an artist becomes a member of the Grand Ole Opry. Not WSM, like early in my career, I was working at a country music station in Jackson. I was the program director there. And we had come up with this crazy idea that Willie Nelson was going to play close to Jackson at an amphitheater. And so we were working promotions. We had a promotion going with the amphitheater. And so we were going to go, and we had this idea that it was close to his birthday, that we were going to create this giant birthday card, and we were going to put it on this big easel and let listeners come by and sign it. And then right before the concert, we were going to present it to Willie Nelson. And so the day of the concert, like a torrential rainstorm comes through the area, and it just rains for hours and hours and hours. But we were determined we were going to get this card to Willie Nelson. So we go out and we set up and we tried to put up tarps. And I stood in the rain for probably 5 hours trying to cover this thing and let people come by and sign it. We had like 10 signatures on it because no one wanted to stand in the rain, and everybody was like looking for a place to not be in the rain. And then, and we didn't get to present it to him before the concert, but after the concert, like at 11 o'clock that night, and we'd gotten there at like 8 o'clock that morning. And 11 o'clock at night, I finally got to present this birthday card, this giant, wet, ink running off of it birthday card to Willie Nelson. But he was really cool about it. He was really appreciative. So there's just all sorts of stories like that where you just, radio is one of those weird industries where it's not the same day to day. It's totally unpredictable. and you're in the public a lot and you're doing, live broadcast, and anything can happen and anybody can come up. And it's, there are so many just cool people stories that I have over the years because of radio.
That's awesome. I know, when I'm over at the Opry and I hear stories about people that have grown up listening to WSM with their grandparents, it's just amazing that, your history spans across, so many different artists and so many different time periods in country music. And it really has touched people throughout the years. And you always kind of hear those stories when people are coming to the Opry and coming to visit and say that it's a dream come true. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's really, the artists love WSM, which I love, and that's not, I don't want to be braggadocious by saying that, but we really are the country music station that the artists love because of our history and because we are this kind of eclectic mix of the stuff that you would, like modern country during the day, but then at night we do go very classic, and we do kind of tell the history of country music every night on our station. So yeah, it's a really cool place to work.
That's awesome. So what advice would you give for someone, high school, early college, that's wanting to pursue a career in this industry, the hospitality industry, radio business? What kind of advice would you give to someone like that in pursuing that kind of career?
Well, it's gonna change because radio is very much different today than it was when I was in high school wanting to be in radio. It's a lot more complicated today than it was when I first started. And so know that it's, radio is always going to be here. It's like I said earlier, it's not probably even today what you think. You think radio is just like you get in your car and you turn on the radio and you listen while you drive, or, if you or at work and the radio is playing, there's a radio in the background. It's much more than that now, because radio does really encompass all these streaming platforms and podcasting. And it's just, radio has grown a lot in the last, a decade, especially 15 years. And so know that if you get into the radio business, you can't just learn one set of skills, that you're always going to be evolving your set of skills. Now, there is the core set of skills that you need to have going into it. Strong communication. I think that's probably key. A willingness to work hard and work, weekends. It's not radio, no matter what you do on any level, is not 9 to 5. It's not an office job. It is very much, especially in my position, because we're always broadcasting. In essence, it's 24/7. So, and there's a lot of weekends. I've worked a lot of weekends in my career. So, but with that trade-off, you do get the really cool experiences like we talked about earlier. So a willingness to work hard, a willingness to work a lot of hours, strong communication skills, and you got to be tech savvy. And that's kind of an old term, but it still applies. You really have to know technology and be willing to work with technology, because, for instance, all of the editing that we do now, all of the audio editing that we do is digital. So, if you were thinking about a career in radio, I would start a podcast and I would learn a simple digital editing program. There's the ones like GarageBand and Adobe Audition, but you can find very simple 1-track or 2-track digital audio editing programs that you could, for $100, get a couple of microphones, a laptop, and create your own podcast. And you're making radio. And, that is kind of the equivalent of me walking into a station and asking if I can just hang out. I just craved that experience in this, in this industry that I didn't know anything about. And it's much like video entertainment today. It's a lot simpler now to start testing the waters and seeing if that's something you're interested in. And, marketing, as I said earlier, marketing is so much more important now in the radio business than it was, when I first got started. So really being on top of marketing and be willing to deal with data and, crunch data. You're going to have to do that in any level of this business at some point. And I think there is a parallel with the hospitality business because, for us, the guest experience is the most important. And when I say guest, I mean, we consider our listeners our guests because we're inviting them in to experience, this audio entertainment that we're creating. So they are our guests. And then of course you have like guests that come into the studio, like artists. And be it a listener, be it an artist, it's very important to me that we provide them with world-class experience. Like if you're an artist, you love coming on the air with our morning show because nobody treats us like WSM does. Or if you're a listener and you come to one of our live broadcasts, or you come to the Opry and you meet, one of our personalities, it's very important to me that experience is always great. And look, and even in the hospitality business, sometimes you have to fake it because you're not always having a great day, but you always have to have that mindset that no matter what kind of day I'm having, no matter what's going on over here that nobody knows about. And again, this applies in radio and hospitality. When you encounter that guest, they get an experience unlike any other, and they get the absolute best experience that you can provide them. So in that way, I think there are parallels between hospitality and radio.
I love it. That was an awesome answer and great advice as well. You don't think about how easy it is to kind of get experience with, being able to start your own podcast or, just kind of do those kind of things just as learning experiences. And so that's really fantastic advice, I think, for anyone that kind of wants to understand why radio works. And, it's that simple for them to kind of get that experience. That's really great.
Yeah,
well,
it really is.
Well, thank you so much, JP, for your time and for your expertise and for all that you do at WSM. I know I always enjoy tuning in and knowing that I know some of the faces behind that story. And it was such a pleasure to get to chat with you. I can't wait to get to share this with, some students and so that they can really get to learn more about your industry. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you.